surrounding yourself with good people, the right people. I had the wrong people around me, especially through the Aniki stuff. Definitely, I had people gaslighting me the entire time when I was the actual center of it all and I didn't realize. So having the right people around you, I think, is super important. But also understanding that 90% of everything is like vision and confidence, and consistency. But like knowing clearly what you're shooting for and going for it is that was my secret sauce always. And I didn't have all the answers, but I just showed up and was prepared to do the work and had the vision and the confidence to kind of go, okay, I'm going to do it.
Welcome to another Few podcast. It's me, Boo, here with my co-host, Sean. Sean, how are you today, mate?
Fantastic, Boo. Really excited for our upcoming guest today.
I'm super excited. This is an area that I've constantly struggled with, wasted inordinate amounts of money, and just when I think I know what I'm doing, the world changes from underneath me and I need to learn it all over again.
Absolutely. And the one thing that makes me cringe, one of the things that makes me cringe the most is whenever I'm talking to a business owner and they say, I was talking to this website company and ... right? Yeah. Now I know that 99.9% of the time, it's going to mean something like, I've just flushed thousands of dollars down the toilet.
Yeah. Or I've just built my new website. Look at it. Oh, I've built a brand new website. I'm going to get so much business now.
And it's just a fancy brochure sitting there that nobody knows even exists, if they even get that. You know, the last one was great. Last one I got was like someone spent $3,500, paid some family friend up front and got nothing. So that was even
It'd be so nice if there was someone out there that knew what they're doing. Let me tell you.
Exactly. So that's a great segue into our next guest, who is definitely not falling into that category. It's the 0.01% category, is Jen Jeavons. Now, Jen is the founder of Pixel Palace, and Pixel Palace focus on strategic marketing, not like a marketing company that is going to, take your money and hopefully get you an outcome. But this is strategic, researched, deliberate, targeted marketing, as well as web design that actually goes hand in hand and like dovetails together so that you've got the strategy and the site working to actually do what a website's meant to do and what your marketing's meant to do, which is get qualified leads so you can produce business from that and produce a revenue from that. So I want to say a massive welcome to Jen. Jen's background not only in Pixel Palace, she also had a little bit of a career in the singing world, and I'll let her fill you in on that a little bit later. And but it's an exciting start to her journey into adulthood and then across into business, and hopefully we can get some correlation between those two, I suppose, different lives. So once again, really happy to have you on, Jen. So welcome.
Thank you. Yes, it's an interesting tale, my journey across from music to what I do now.
But Jen, you weren't just music, the rock and roller Stepford. Like, you did some pretty cool stuff in music, didn't you? Stuff that you're pretty proud of.
There's a bit of the story, right? But yes, my entire life from when I was tiny, all I wanted to do was sing and make music and write and be on stage. And so I pursued that heavily for the first 20, 30 years of my life. So up until when I was 30, music was my full-time career. And yep, I did really well out of it. Look, I
love Pixel Palace, but I love a good story too. Jen, all of that, basically 30 years of your life, there must have been some pretty cool highlights there doing singing professionally. What's some of the things that you remember the most?
Well, I was lucky enough to score a gig as a backing singer for Savage Garden in 1997.
Wow, did they fight all the time? Or are they like pretty chill? It always seems like there's a bit of tension there.
Honestly, we could do an hour podcast on that. I'm not going to go into it, but it'll be part of my book that I'm hoping to write.
Awesome. No doubt you learned something from that experience, though.
Oh, a lot. So I did about 1.5 years with them, touring the world, which was amazing. And then after that, I got my own record deal and publishing deal, and had a really big pop hit here in Australia in 2001. So,
cool. We need that to add to that intro.
If you Google me, you'll see it. But the band was called Aniki, and the song was called Pleased to Meet You. But it ended up being the most played Australian song on commercial radio for 2 years running. Like
wow.
Can't Get You Out of My Head by Kylie was second after us in terms of airplay that year.
Man, that is crazy.
Right.
Yeah,
Wow.
massive.
Well, there's the few right there. Not many people get to have a hit on the radio.
And a
That's
hit
awesome.
that beats one of Kylie's.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
But it's an interesting story, right? Because really, when that all fell in a pile of shit, which it did when I was in my late 20s, and
High risk career path, isn't it? Really, if you.
I made no money, despite writing, co-producing, performing, touring, everything about that song. I literally made $4,000 taxable income that year that I had the most played song on Australian radio.
Wow.
It's okay. The tax man doesn't listen to this show. You can be straight up.
Yeah. So, it wasn't, I loved it. It was amazing, but I really had got to a point in my late 20s where it was just pushing shit up a hill really hard with the record company, everything. So again, massive story for another time, probably part of my book. But
how did you then go from music to
web
design, like to digital design?
Well, so when Aniki was when the album was coming out, the record company paid for a website. So in the early 2000s, there weren't many websites. It was like the beginning of the web. So we had this really cool website, but they didn't have any money to update it. So my brother and I, who I lived with at the time because I was earning no money, I was literally living with my brother in Brisbane while I was pop starring it, decided that we'd download Dreamweaver and we'd learn how to edit the website ourselves. And so we did. And so then I started updating the website with content from me about stuff. And I would be on the IRC chat chatting to fans. And this was the only real way I could communicate with people that loved the music. And I'd get on the Aniki chat rooms and actually chat to people. And I really just fell in love with web and communicating. Like for me, it's funny, people always say, how did you go from like pop star songwriting to web? And it's like they're kind of the same thing. It's like communication and storytelling and connection, and it's like that's always been my driver, is creativity and connection with people. So when it fell in a heap and I literally had to start my life again at 29, 30, told the record company to get staffed and went traveling with my boyfriend at the time, now my husband, and came back and was like, what am I going to do? I like web. And I went and did a TAFE course, literally, and I had to put up with people going, you look like that girl that sang that song. And I'm in the TAFE course. So yeah, that was the beginning of it. And it just sort of grew from there.
Awesome. So you had which is an interesting story, because externally people would look at your singing career and go, wow, you had a song that was more played than Kylie, and you toured the world for a year and a half playing, in front of up to 25,000 people at a time, and all this sort of stuff. And wow, you were so successful. What did you feel at the time? Did you feel successful at the time?
This is such the insight, right? So I spent the last 10 years following that, or even 15 years following the Aniki thing, I felt like a failure. Like I was embarrassed. I started this business, and for 10, 15 years, until the last 12 months, I didn't tell anyone that was me. Like it wasn't part of my narrative, because I felt like I'd failed. And part of why I felt like I failed was because I had people around me that were telling me I was unsuccessful. Like and there's again another story for another time, but a lot of gaslighting.
Wow. Yeah, that's a peer group that's not going to lift you to the next level in life, is it?
Correct. And my big learning from that is about the people around me, and not letting like the circle of people, the people that are around you are the sum of the people around you. And so I had some not very good people around me at that time. None of the people from that time are in my life anymore, and look at me now.
It's a good point that you make, because what we try and identify, Jen, with when Sean and I started this, and we're like, whoa, what's different? What is it? What is this thing about people that look through a glass wall and they see someone they want to be, and then they get there? And one of the interesting things, kind of off topic here, but I'd be really interested to hear from you, is one of the things for me is I achieved my life dream when I was 21. Right? Some people never get there. And then lived that dream for 10 years, and then forcibly had to do something else, and felt all those things like a failure, and I don't know how to do anything else but this one very niche thing. How did you find that journey then, in terms of, I mean, if there is a bit of a negative peer group around you, but that inner something that kept you moving despite all of that. I don't know, what do you kind of call that? How does that feel to you?
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I've only identified this about myself literally in the last 6 months, but my massive driver is challenge and the journey for me. Like I feel successful every day when I'm feeling challenged and like I'm progressing. So for me, interestingly, with the music career in particular, the best times of that were literally like the times before everything happened. Like when we were writing the album for Aniki, and I spent 6 months living in Stockholm working with producers and catching a train to the studio every day and just writing amazing music and producing it. And that, like the anticipation of what was to come kind of thing, and the challenge of trying to always do something better was better than, honestly, I mean, the moments of being on the panel or being on Rove or being at a concert where everyone's singing the words back to me to my song. They were big moments. But honestly, I got to a point where I felt like it wasn't what I thought it would be. So I was ready for the next thing. And I realized that in what I'm doing now, a big part of it now is acknowledging that, like the challenge and the journey for me is the bit. And I've learnt to sit back into that and go.
And I think when you're there, you don't realize it. When you're at that stage, when you haven't grown and matured enough to realize it, that your focus is, when I get here, then I'll be successful. Then I'll feel like a success, and when I have this and I've got 1 million fans and, when I've made $1 million from my albums and stuff, that's when I'll be successful.
And that robbed me of the joy of those things in the Aniki bit, in my music career, in particular, even in the Savage Garden thing. I was 21 when I was doing that. I was such a baby. We all were babies, like even they were babies. And there was this sense of, I just felt like it was going to go on forever. And I didn't really stop and take it in the way I do now with what I'm doing now, and realizing that, that's what motivates. That's the motivator for me, was always the challenge and the hopefulness of what was to come kind of thing. So
it's a really animalistic trait in us, isn't it? It's the same as when you talk to someone who climbed Everest. It's like, once you get there, it's like, oh, I'm here now. It was all the climbing and the pain and the day-to-day challenge to actually to get there. So if you think about that, Jen, and the fact you've got perspective on it now, it doesn't change though, does it? You still need the challenge. It's just you appreciate the journey more. And so many successful people say once they have what society says is success, the money, the song, whatever it is, for the successful person, that's the end. But that's where everyone sees you at the start. And the paradox of success, I guess, is it has to be followed by failure because it's unsustainable.
Well, that's it. Like everything keeps moving. So that, I think that is when even my business now got supercharged, was when this clicked for me. And it was in December, January this year, literally, where it clicked, that exactly what you just said. Like there's not going to be an end point for me. There's not a finish point. It's about every single day, that feeling of, like there's a challenge, and it's reframed challenges too. The hard stuff has now become, rightio, game on, I'm leveling up, let's go. Like it's like going to the gym. It's a complete perspective change, which makes me more successful by everyone else's terms, but also I feel different. It's defined differently though now.
So having obviously been part of your journey now for almost 2 years, and how you were in yourself when it comes to leadership, self-awareness, all that sort of stuff back then versus now, what do you think the key things have been, or tactics, strategies, lessons, whatever those might be, so that we can share those with our listeners? What do you think those were that took you from kind of, where there was freak out moments of, Sean, this person's just left, and they're like my whole business. And then we're like, yeah, but hang on, if they weren't really a fit. So let's replace that person with 2 people with more specific skill sets, and suddenly whoop, everything started to happen, right? But that version of yourself then was still very, I suppose, fearful of the change and the challenge versus now you I think, you've moved to office twice in 12
heaps. I'm already, and my new lease, I'm just about to go to the landlords and go, I need a bigger one from in the same building.
So what were those key things, do you feel, those key tactics, strategies, lessons that you took away that allowed you to shift into this more authentic and stronger and inspirational version of yourself?
I think what you just said is so true. Like I was still, a bit of what happened to me in my music career was still happening here, where I was very dependent on people around, like trying to cling on and get certainty from people around me, and had nothing internally. So I would definitely say the biggest thing that I did and learned was to invest in myself, like to actually stop. And so it was things like getting a business mentor like yourself, and investing not just financially in that, but like time, like committing to doing it and saying, right, I'm going to do it even though it's hard. And it hasn't been easy. Like, I mean, you know, I've rung you bawling my guts out at least twice. So like, but investing in that financially as well as time-wise, as well as mentally, everything. And also investing in personal development stuff. So all of the work that I've done around energy clearing, getting through old blocks, getting rid of old stories, like I've invested heavily in that. And that again, wasn't easy.
But over the last 2 years, how much has consistency played a part in that?
Huge amounts. Showing up. So 100% in all of it. Like that's investing, right? So consistency is investing in the plan and the outcome. So 100%. Like in my business, invested is like one of our key values. And for me, it's that's everything about everything I ever do. So yeah, I think that's a big one, is consistency, being invested in the outcome, in spending the money on it, spending the time on it. The other things were really being aware of my ego, because I think the ego thing was making me cling on to other people as well, weirdly, in a backwards way.
Well, can you explore that one, Jen? Because I find when we talk ego with people, everyone tends to think big ego, which isn't necessarily
or bad.
No.
Or bad
yeah.
ego.
So when you say ego, like for you and your journey to like continual and bigger success,
yeah,
what does that mean?
Well, it was things like playing small because I was scared that people would judge me, or relying on people around me. Like ego doesn't need to be the big, confident, blustering thing. It can be the fact that even my ego was the thing that was stopping me sharing my music story with people. Like that's ego. And even that example, not sharing that story has massive impact. Like there's so much in it. And like I keep saying, there's a book in it, because every time I share bits of that story with people, there's lessons in it that are so valuable that like made me who I am.
It's so intense and rich. It's such a rich life experience.
Ridiculous not to share it. People are so interested and there's so much to share there. So that's ego of me being scared to show up. So I also think in terms of hiring and being egoless in terms of getting team who are substantially more intelligent or better at things than you, is a thing that I consistently see people around me getting wrong. They're too scared to hire because their ego won't let them hire someone really good. They go for a junior. Like that's ego, just in every way for me. I've never been.
So there's a bit of ego. There's a bit of fear with ego. A bit of fear, a bit of insecurity with it.
Fear was my number one. If you had to list my number one problem, Sean would back me up 2 years ago. Fear. And fear, even like people go, well, you clearly weren't scared. Like I'm confident, right? So I show up and I'm an extrovert and I'm happy to be on stage. But I was so fearful all through my music career of everything. But I could get up I could sing live on the panel, acoustic, on the highest rating TV show at the time. So like confidence and in my ability to do that, but fearful that I just didn't have what it took underneath it all. So fear.
I think there's a difference there, Jen, between that confidence can be faked, but certainty cannot.
Yeah, I had no certainty. Yeah, whereas now,
when we don't have that certainty, we're like a deer in headlights. You know, half the time that all this stuff can go on, and it's really, really like it blocks us for doing so many things. And obviously, you achieve what you achieved then, despite that, right? So, and that was by pushing, by making it happen, using confidence to, I suppose, for want of a better term, which is not a great term, fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
You know, that
I was going to say no bluff too tough, but there's plenty out there to hang your hat on.
100%. Like I just had a single-minded. That music thing is an example of, since I was little, I wasn't pushy about it, but I just knew in my head I was going to be a pop star from when I was little. I just was like, I'm just going to be Madonna. And so opportunities arise, and I took them when other people didn't. I just said yes to things that I wasn't ready for, and I just did it. But yeah, it was definitely that fake it till you make it thing constantly.
But I think what's really interesting there, though, is it's so many people struggle to find their purpose in life, or why they exist. And I was equally, since I could remember, going to be a fighter pilot. It's the only thing I knew. Everything I did in life was towards that goal. You wanted to sing. Everything you did, it totally defines your childhood and formative years with that level of focus. How do you find subsequently finding purpose and subsequently harnessing that or using those skills that you've learned to achieve before in the next phase of life?
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like it's so the same for me. And like I've done talks on this, but it's like I'm just driven by connection and visibility and impact. So like the music career was exactly the same thing. I wasn't about getting up. I never wanted to be on like a TV show singing someone else's songs. They were all my songs and my stories. Like the whole album is me and my life at that time. So like it's just authentic connection and people and communication and visibility though. Like I'm driven by people going, wow, Jen, you're really good at that. Mm-hmm. So like I am driven by that, and it's a bit of ego, but it's also, I use it in a way that helps. I love elevating other people as well. So
how does the flip side feel?
Of if they don't like me, terrible. And I'm just lucky, honestly, in my music career. Like I literally, people go, how did you like cope with the knockbacks? I just never got any. It was weird.
Yeah, wow.
It was just like the universe went, here's your path.
Yeah.
Like opportunities arose. I said yes. I mean,
it looks to me, based on what's going on at the moment, that it's kind of history repeating itself.
Yeah, but this time, I'm not doing what I did last time.
And I don't mean the collapse bit. I mean the allowing it to flow and
I'm good at getting in flow. It's just that the fear would get in. But this time, I'm doing all the things now to make sure that old stuff doesn't repeat.
Now you're showing up with certainty. That's the difference between the you that I met a couple of years ago and the you now is you.
All right. Okay, guys, we're skirting an issue here. There's something's happened. And I think a big part of the few and for us to be able to influence and also put an arm around people that listen to the show is, Jen, what happened? Like what is the worst thing that's happened to you, and how has that shaped who you are and what you are in terms of a business owner and as a successful individual? You've got to have these painful moments, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And 100%, I've had two massive ones. The first one was I got fired from Savage Garden in a story.
Oh, wow.
Which was I went from touring the world to suddenly, no, you're not doing the next 6 months. You're just at home in Brisbane with no work, no job, no nothing, no money, done. And then weirdly, I got my record deal about a year later from Savage Garden. So there you
go. So it
story
all
for another time.
Out. Yeah, you've got it, but that wouldn't have happened if you didn't lose it, right?
The story was that the failures have been massive lessons in the fact that you can come back from anything. So like for me, and then fast forwarding to Aniki, where, okay, great, trajectory, awesome, massive hit single, killing it, all the things, APRA Songwriter of the Year, shared with Sia for 2002, like crazy shit happening. And then bang, nope, sorry, pretty much record company loses interest.
Tumbleweeds.
No one wants to hear from you, done. And I'm broke, I'm nearly 30, I have nothing except embarrassment that I'm a complete failure, like no money. All my friends are married with houses and careers, and I have like been visible, and I'm completely broke and completely fucked. And then my mother passed away suddenly, and I went, that is it. And I pulled the plug, and I didn't sing for 2 years, and we went traveling. And so like I bottomed out in a big way, cut off everyone I knew at that point, and literally started Pixel Palace, like, you know, a year or so
But
later.
How do you rebuild? I mean, you took a couple of years. How do you self-heal and refocus through that? My experience was just jump out, move to Afghanistan, set up a business from scratch, disappear off the face of the earth for 3 years, and then come back home. How did you self-heal through that and get the... I know you said that you started to muck around with the website with your brother, but there's a deeper element to it, is there? I mean, mucking around with the website to being a successful entrepreneur and businesswoman. Yeah. What's the thing, or the mantras, or the process that you go through?
It was when I didn't know at the time, I literally didn't, it was literally one foot in front of the other at the time, dead set. Like it was, I didn't really want to go out. I didn't see anyone. All of the friends I had, I didn't want to see anymore. I went back to all my old friends that were still there, thank God, after all the shit. But what I realized was actually what back to that challenge piece and the helping people piece, like the connection and elevating people around me, which is my personal purpose. Like that was how I started. Like I realized I had a skill and I quite enjoyed the creative design part of web. And then I knew friends that needed stuff. So I was just helping and it just started going. And then suddenly my helping turned into, like we said before, the universe kind of clears the way. And suddenly I was getting clients from all over the place, LA based fashion clients and stuff from my bedroom in Brisbane. So it was just about that personal purpose, even though I didn't really know it yet. It was just pivoting on my why, not my what, I guess is the big thing. And I've been talking about this heaps recently with my team, but I didn't realize at the time that that was my why, but it was, and it still is. And it was my why when I was doing music. It was about connection and people and all that sort of stuff, like human connection. And even now it's the same. It's about people and communication. So I just pivoted on my what, on my why.
Did you waver though? Did you wait, like when you go from one career stream to a new one, were you feeling pressure to go into mainstream, get a job?
Yeah, and I did. I got a job, like my friend owned a really good hair salon in Brisbane and he went, look, if you need work, you can come and be my salon coordinator. So I literally was like a door bitch at a hairdresser for a year. And again, people would go, aren't you that girl from an... I'm like, oh my God, seriously. Yeah, I just look like
She's
it.
my evil twin. Yeah.
Yeah, people say it all the time. I don't know why.
Yeah, I just get my hair done here to look the same. Yeah.
But so I did. Like I didn't go, and I also had my partner at the time who I got married to, and we decided to have kids. So there was a whole heap of things that happened in between. But I really did dump and run. I didn't sing at all for 2 years. And thank God some people I knew in Brisbane that had been, really well-known musos in Brisbane contacted me and they needed a new singer for their awesome corporate band. And they convinced me, again, here's an example of me putting my ego aside. I love singing. I love being on stage in front of people. But I was so embarrassed about the whole thing. And I was like, I can't go back to covers. How can I go back to covers? And they convinced me to join they were the top corporate band in Brisbane at the time. So it wasn't exactly a come down. But I remember sitting in the rehearsal room at the first rehearsal with them. And I sat on the couch and they're all setting up. And I literally sat there crying silently because I was like, this is shit. How did I end up back here? But
Wow.
Dead set, that was the best move of my life because I was with that band for 15 years and it saved me.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I got back, we were big shows, like a lot of that 80s stuff that I was doing, like big shows in front of people. It was so fun. And I had the best 15 years in that band.
So you weren't taking it so seriously, or you actually were enjoying it this time? Just enjoying it?
Yeah, with no pressure and just singing for the joy of being up in front of people and connecting and making people happy, which is my personal purpose again. But I had to put ego aside.
There's the expression, obviously, the whole overnight success thing. So, it sounds like neither of your successes, as we're talking to here, were overnight. No. But what I observed though is there's been a dramatic shift, considering how long you've had been involved in the web side, the web development side, in the last 2 years, and probably more so the last 18 months or less.
I would say 6 months.
Even but it's accelerating.
Oh yeah.
What has been the difference between it kind of going flat like this and this massive kind of hockey stick change and shift and growth? Like, what's been the key, like light bulb moments, realizations, lessons, or something that's got you to make it click, to make it work?
I think realizing that business isn't complicated and we make it complicated. So like just getting out of the way, like I knew it when I came to you, Sean, that I was the biggest problem in the business because the business was doing exceptionally well, even despite all of my absolute crap stories that I had going on. I just couldn't.
What it had been in the past.
Yeah.
Not compared to now.
No. So I think that like realizing that if you follow the process and you show up and you're consistent and that you plan and that you tick off all the boxes and alongside that work on yourself, because what I have seen too in the last couple of years, it's become glaringly obvious to me that the people that are running successful businesses have done a lot of personal development work.
Absolutely.
If you're a bit busted and have a lot of bad stories going, it's incredibly difficult to scale a business and have team and have happy clients. And especially in what I do, like service industry stuff, I don't know how people do it.
The thing is, if it was all based on how to, we could just Google it, look at Wikipedia, YouTube, whatever, get all the stuff. This is how you create a successful business. We'd all be billionaires.
Yeah. No.
But it's what goes on in here And as the
You have
saying-
to be a psychopath to be a billionaire. I'm almost convinced of that now.
Yeah.
I'm
definitely,
sure you do, but let's just
definitely
say,
have to
let's
have
just say,
something.
yeah, really well off. Let's say really well off. To
Makes me feel much better about not being one anyway.
You're not a psychopath.
It helps, but that thing of what's going on in here is what's blocking us, and that thing, as you know, you've heard me say too, Jen, is like business isn't complicated. People complicate business,
100%.
and we're the most complicated of them all because we're the ones that decided to jump off the cliff and then go, oh crap, I need to build something before I hit the ground, before I go splat. And we just kind of just do it, just wing it and get in there and give it a go. My observations to reflect back what you've just said, Jen, I think, which is good for those listening, is it's there's a couple of key things there. There's number one is consistency. And it's the C word that you need to remember all the time, right? Consistency. That if you're not consistently showing up, you're not consistently doing what other people that have what you want, that are on the other side of that piece of glass. Yeah. If that person's doing something consistently that you're not, then you're less likely to get where they're going. Because if you look through lots of different pieces of glass at different people, you probably see that thing that they're doing is consistent across 90+% of them. Yeah. Right? So success leaves clues. It leaves patterns, habits, things that people are doing. And they're not necessarily hard. It's just what is hard is actually having the drive and the commitment to yourself to consistently show up and consistently do it time and time and time again.
100%. I think
I've definitely observed that with you in the last 2 years.
Yeah, I think also what was crucial with me was that I identified, and I kind of knew this anyway, but I'm very driven by how I'm perceived, for better or worse. So I'm better than I was on that, but I've used that to my advantage in this. So I am very much, I'm not internally, I'm very extrinsically motivated. Like I'm not intrinsically motivated, and I know that about myself. So I have to put myself in a situation where I'm accountable to other people for me to be consistent. If I'm accountable to you and the group, Sean, to show up and say, here's my goals for the week, here's my strategic planning, here's what I said I'd do. If I said I'll be here at this time, I'll be there. And I am very, very consistent because I know if I put myself publicly out there, that works for me. If I don't, and it's just up to me, I won't be consistent. I know.
I'm going to say, Jenna, I don't think you're fully extrinsically motivated. You're still.
No, I think you've got to have the intrinsic motivation.
Intrinsic drive. I think it's that extrovert personality type.
But if
there's a lot of quiet nights.
I'll let it go.
A lot of quiet nights there where people aren't patting you on the back. They're not, and this is again one of the areas we love to explore here is that motivation, the inner fire. It's fascinating. When I got in a little bit of trouble when I was a fighter pilot because I was a little bit loose with some of the rules, and my boss sat me down and wrote this formal letter. And he goes, "Look, I know that in reality you're a safe pilot, you're a decent guy, but the perception out there is that you're not." And that for me, like you just said there, Jen, was perception is so important. You don't have to live and make everyone believe you're someone else, but you have to be aware when you're influencing or engaging people that they are perceiving you a certain way. How they perceive you is totally up to you.
And the problem is that their perception, if sustained, becomes their reality.
Yes.
Right? So that doesn't matter what you say or do, if it's ingrained for long enough, that person's going to perceive you that way. Right. It's even when you haven't met somebody before and someone goes, "Oh yeah, just watch out for that guy. They're a bit of a dickhead." And then you meet them and you're like, "I'm not seeing dickhead," but there's always this thing about, is this person like, because someone's already put a pre-program in, you're kind of looking for it because someone else has had a bad experience. Mm-hmm. But then when you spend a lot of time with them, you don't see it at all. But again, it's that person's perception of what their interactions
And is that something you were aware of, Jen? The perception of Jen, the pop star versus
aware. I'm still like, it's probably my biggest, like my business was built on high functioning anxiety about what people thought of me for like a good 10 years. Literally. It was why I do believe it's not healthy, but it's why this business is different to most other web businesses out there.
Jen, it must be a singer thing because that was the first 10, 15 years of my business career.
Yes.
It was all about
it's about how people perceive
richer, being perceived as this, despite going down a many six figures financial black hole as I was growing my business and doubling every year because my ego loved it. Eating 2-minute noodles at home. That it was actually driven by what other people thought and not what I thought. It was.
So I could see the few band here now. I mean, it's starting to shape up as a little something. So way too much energy in that one.
Oh, Jen and I actually did do a duo a couple of months ago.
We did. We performed
to close off the event that you and the Afterburners.
Oh, wow.
The Afterburners show. We closed.
Lucky
off
I was blessed with a horrible singing voice.
Doing a cover of Farnham's "You're the Voice." So,
oh wow,
that's
next level. That's like one level down from Whitney Houston.
We're both terrified of what everyone would say about us as well. So it was great.
And for me, it had been 13 years since I got in front of and got up in front with my guitar and sang in front of anybody, and it was in front of 100 people who were my clients, which was a very different context and very uncomfortable. But
I think it's a good exercise for both of us, Sean. That's my thing, is about being, it's okay, and I think I've still got work to do to let go of, and I've come a long way. I think part of the supercharging of this business in the last 6 months is me actually relaxing a little bit of that.
Well, that was the second point I was going to get to before about what I've observed. The first one is about consistency. The second one is about you investing in yourself, right? Because people go, I'm going to invest in this program or this course or this person or this. Well, you're not. They're just a vehicle, right? When we're investing in ourselves through that vehicle. And if we've got a 2-door MX-5 and now we've got 2 kids, we're going to need to change the freaking vehicle. It's not going to work unless you can fit them in the boot. And it's very small. So, the whole concept of this is that you've consistently the last 2 years invest in yourself to get not only, and this is the thing I think people perceive is that, you want to go and learn how to build a business. Well, you don't. You want to learn how to become a great business person. That's what builds great businesses, because great business people build great businesses. And if you try and build a business first, it'll fall back to wherever you are. You've got to build yourself ahead of where the business is going. And that focus, not only on learning the business stuff and being consistent around the planning and execution and strategies, it's been this focus also on actually dealing with your underlying stuff. The psychology stuff, the doing energy work and stuff. As you know, I introduced you to Sand Mew, who I work with, is incredible talent in that space. I call her my secret weapon. She's the one that helped me break my arm, Boo, like you've done with yours. It was going through some process. But anyway, it's another story for another time. But and then the last one is surrounding yourself by the right people. Those 3 things: consistency, investing in yourself, and surrounding yourself with the right people. 100%. I've seen you just absolutely blossom, like just into the authentic, true version of yourself. There's no bravado or bullshit or ego coming. It's just, hey, I'm Jen, and I like myself. Here I am. I'm here to help and serve, and I've gotten full of energy, and not all the time, because we're human. Yeah. But when you're there to serve, you're there to serve at the highest level, and that's 100%. Come from those three elements.
And that's a good segue into a question I'm really keen to hear you answer, Jen, and that's to be successful, and not what other people perceive as successful. For you to believe you're successful is obviously the result of a lot of battle and a lot of sacrifices all the way through life, and a lot of people are put off by that. But if you look at yourself now, what is the payoff? What is the upside of going through all of those ups and downs and choosing a career path and a life that's clearly, no matter how good you are, how talented you are guaranteed to put yourself on a roller coaster? What is the payoff to that, living that life well lived now?
It's the perspective. Like it's given me this ability to not only see myself and my life in a perspective, but other people's as well. So I have a massive amount of empathy and perspective on other people, which is a superpower, especially in what I do now with team, but with clients as well. So that, but I think it's just, it's perspective. Like that fact that I can enjoy the journey now, like I can enjoy challenges, because I kind of know, man, I've bottomed out several times. Badly. And I always kind of came back, like I talked to my team, some of my team are young too. And I'm like, dudes, I started this at 30 and look at it. Like you're 27 and you're freaking out. Can you stop? I feel like Gary Vee. I'm like, you're not over. Like I'm about to turn 45 and I feel like I'm just hitting my stride. Like I'm really hitting the juice now. This is it. So, I think it's that, like the perspective, enjoying.
But how great is that to go through life and keep hitting the accelerator? I mean, so many people start to tail off.
Yeah, no.
And start to give up and start to resign themselves to this is the best life gets. To see that it can continually get better. I mean, how cool is that?
That's it. And I think that's my thing, right? Like that's actually part of my personal purpose, is to fully inspire people around me to realize exactly that. Like my personal purpose is to do well by doing good while supporting, elevating, and inspiring those around me. And part of it is that, like, that it's never over. And if you get in your lane and you're on your why and your purpose and the things that float your boat, then it doesn't feel like work, and you can, like, it can keep going.
It's funny though, isn't it?
Run out of time because I'm having fun.
It's not, but it's something that's quite hard to tell people, and
you can't tell people.
Yeah, and you've had all these ups and downs, and I find with kids especially, you're like, oh, they're going to get hurt by this, but it's like, well, you're going to have to, because that's the best thing about it, and that's going to do you a much bigger favor than keeping you safe from it. And millennial, I hate that term, millennials, but let's call it people with less experience in life. When they find these things insurmountable, I must admit, I do find it challenging to impart knowledge sometimes and your experience, because you just, how can you help them learn without hurting them? Because that's the thing that I remember.
I've learned to let my team kind of fail a couple of times on things to really feel the burn on things when I could have helped. But also the other, like, this is part of why I am glad I've started owning my story now, because I will wheel out, like, people so often for years too would go, everything falls in your lap. Everything's so easy. You just get all the opportunity. Everything, it's so easy for you. You got this, like, it's, and oh my God.
Who are you quoting there? Because clearly that's someone in
a lot of
with a bad lisp.
People.
With a bad lisp.
But it's a common theme from people around me that know me, that watch from the outside and seem to think that, okay,
I'm assuming they're not part of your inner circle though, these people.
Yeah.
They're periphery people.
Periphery people. The inner circle people know how hard as in my inner circle people,
as in your inner
know
circle.
how hard I have worked over and know the ups and downs that I've had.
But isn't it interesting observing people projecting their vomit onto you?
Absolutely, 100%.
Like,
and I've done a lot of work of cutting,
especially in nightclubs when you're singing when you're 22 years old, no doubt.
But I've cut a lot of those, like those kind of people I either don't engage in. I've cut a lot of toxic people out of my life in the last 2 years as well. That I've had, like friendships I've had since high school, I've got rid of because I'd leave feeling small.
Well, I'm glad I'm still here, Jen. So that's
you're here.
Yeah.
But it's
awesome. That's great. That's great. I mean, we could go on and on and on, and I'm sure there's some stories about other famous singers and stuff.
Oh man.
And
that's a whole podcast series on its own.
Time for another time.
Yeah,
but
that's a secret podcast. Yeah,
it's a secret podcast. That's right. It's the one where you have to leave it running for 10 minutes, then it starts. Like those old albums are really freaking annoying. So I want to say a massive thank you, Jen, for coming on and joining us. And what we'd like to do before we go is to ask a final question, just to give a little bit of something for our listeners to chew on and to consider. And it really comes back to you had a very interesting sort of two clear, distinctly different lives throughout your journey so far. And the question is, what would be the number one thing that you've learnt in life and or business that you would love to go back and teach a younger version of yourself?
There's so many things. I always say, oh my God, give me my 21-year-old body and life back with my brain now, and I would be freaking unstoppable. Fuck, the opportunities I had. But anyway, that aside, so what I would say is, it's probably close to two things: surrounding yourself with good people, the right people. Like I had the wrong people around me, especially through the Aniki stuff. Definitely, I had people gaslighting me the entire time when I was the actual center of it all, and I didn't realize. So having the right people around you, I think, is super important. But also understanding that 90% of everything is like vision and confidence, and consistency, but like knowing clearly what you're shooting for and going for it is that was my secret sauce always. And I didn't have all the answers, but I just showed up and was prepared to do the work and had the vision and the confidence to kind of go, okay, I'm going to do it.
Narrow focus and then just relentlessly chase it
and
down.
even when I was terrified, so I'd hit the terror barrier and I'd keep going, whereas lots of people would hit that terror barrier and stop, but I'd just go. So
the terror barrier, that's in Star Wars, isn't it?
I think it's a thing. It's a real.
Where that Baby Yoda's from. Yeah.
But yeah.
No, that's very cool, Jen. That was such a fun podcast, and it got me thinking as well. Like it's it's super rare to have the opportunity to speak to people whose vision and purpose was instilled into them pretty much as soon as they're born. And it's such a unique life to lead, and such a unique perspective that brings. So thanks so much for bringing it, Shawnee. Thanks, mate, for helping us again today and being such an insightful part of the Few podcast. And that wraps up another episode of The Few. Thank you to our partners, Afterburner, for team building, development and alignment. We understand now how important it is to have the right people around you. Get them on board with where you want to go. Momentum Media, the largest industry publisher in the country, connecting your business to the Australian community. ICMI, Australia's premier speaker bureau, representing the few that do fulfill their life's purpose. And finally, Sean's Inner Circle, the business coaching organisation for small and medium enterprises looking to make that next step. Thanks again for listening in and downloading today. Please leave a review on whatever platform you are currently listening to this podcast, and reach out to our partners who can help you make the transition to the few. Thanks, Sean. Thanks, Jen. I hope you have an awesome time. I look forward to chatting again later.
See ya.